I get hundreds of emails and messages every week from you guys, and I'm not complaining, please keep it up, but I wanted to do a video today to address a few of the questions and queries I see coming in time after time relating to repeaters. One is people asking, is there anything analog left to listen to out there, to which my answer is always yes, there's lots. A digital scanner is always useful to capture the ever-growing number of digital mode users, but analog is still out there and it's non-stop. Other questions are people asking why they can only hear one side of the conversation and how they can find the other side. So let's address this today and start with a bit of backstory. The topic I'm about to cover would probably span about 10 videos if I went into every aspect, so I'll keep this as simple as possible. There's a whole raft of analog simplex or one-to-one users to be heard on your scanner outside of amateur radio because Ofcom's Simple Light license and PMR 446 are so affordable. There are however tons of analog comms repeaters out there for commercial use, and they can be found very easily by scanning around the high band VHF and UHF portions of the spectrum. Now, those who are new to radio may be thinking that repeaters are only used by radio amateurs, but they're not. In fact, the number of commercial repeaters out there far outweighs the number of amateur repeaters, and you can listen to them, but you can't use them. In years gone by, organisations like the Electricity Board, the Gas Board, the AA, the RAC, and of course the police, fire and ambulance services all used unencrypted analogue repeaters. Nowadays, and please bear in mind there's always some exceptions to the rule for most topics I'm covering in this video, the majority of analogue repeaters serve much smaller organisations. When I say exceptions to the rule, some large bus companies and airports use trunked repeater systems which are more complex, and I may do another video on that further down the line. Today, however, we're sticking to good old basic analogue. So most of these repeaters live on hilltop sites such as this, and they're often referred to as comreps or community repeaters. They're usually allocated to users by a separate company on a hired basis for a set period. Common users of these type of repeaters range from taxis, skip companies and independent breakdown services to some airports, local councils and couriers, and everything in between. These hilltop sites are ideal for companies whose workers are mobile. Their altitude means that they can see large expanses of open area, which is perfect for people within that area who want to keep in touch. Other repeaters can be found at specific sites such as shopping centres, hospitals, construction sites and events. A repeater that may cover a shopping centre is known as Shopwatch, and while many of these now use digital standards, many still do use analogue. These are based on the shopping centre roof and serve workers using handhelds in that small area. Hospital repeaters work in the same way, but event repeaters usually differ as they're commonly portable and only hired for that event before being taken away again, but the point I'm working towards remains the same. So why do you sometimes only hear half of the conversation? Well, repeaters are the middleman between two radio operators. They receive the signal from one person and relay it out over a wider area at higher power for the other person to hear and vice versa. In simple terms, they have an input and an output. Your radio talks on the input frequency, the repeater hears this and relays it on the output frequency. If you're hearing only one side of the conversation, then the likelihood is that you're listening to the repeater's input. This is okay if both stations are close by, but if they're both relying on the use of a repeater, the chances of them being close by are slim because that's defeating the object. They could just talk one-to-one or simplex without the need for a repeater. If you're hearing both sides of the conversation, then you're probably on the repeater's output, which is great. So let's say you are on the input, how do you find the output? Well, it's quite simple as a hell of a lot of repeaters carry similar splits. The split is the gap between input and output. Many UHF comreps use a minus 14.5 MHz split, meaning that if for example the output is on 440.375, the input is down on 425.875. Many UHF repeaters also use a plus 6.5 MHz split, meaning that if the output is on 453.6, the input is on 460.1. If we look at VHF, many VHF comreps use minus 4.5 MHz splits, meaning that if the output is on 163.5, the input is down on 159.0. Many VHF comreps also use plus 4.8 MHz splits, meaning that if the output is on 165.1, the input is up on 169.9. Bear in mind that there are exceptions to the rule, as I said earlier, but thousands of repeaters on VHF and UHF use these splits, so if you're hearing one side of the conversation, go up or down by either of these splits I just showed you and you're bound to find the repeater's output frequency. It sounds like a lot of work, but you soon get into the swing of things, and getting to know certain portions of the spectrum helps you to soon sniff out those UHF repeaters that use things like minus 20.5 MHz splits. Now, I have to point out that these repeaters are extremely busy and are often used for important reasons. They require a CT/CSS tone for access and mustn't be used by anyone not authorized to do so. Ofcom take complaints of what is known as harmful interference very seriously, and most of these commercial repeaters are recording transmissions. Ofcom can easily triangulate sources of harmful interference to these sorts of radio systems, and you only need to look around online to find cases where action has been taken against offenders. Nevertheless, these repeaters are there, they're good old-fashioned analog, and they're interesting to monitor for regular comms. Let me know if you'd like to explore this topic deeper in the comments below.